Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining my session today for strategic marketing. My name is Afa Iqbal, and today is Wednesday, 21st of June 2023. And we're going to be talking about strategic marketing on LO3, level 7. We're going to be looking at how to carry out segmentation, targeting, and brand positioning. And we'll be looking to joining you as very much. Okay, so let's look at what we'll be covering. Okay, we're going to be looking at three things. Number one is we're looking at clearly to explore the market segments for an organizational context in an organizational context. And number two is we need to evaluate the targeted segments for an organizational context. And third one is we need to design a differentiated brand positioning for targeted segments for an organizational context. So these are the three things we're going to be looking at. So let's look at the three. The first one of them is to explore market segments for an organizational context. Now we need to look at the market segments in terms of different types of segments and why businesses need segments for their market. Okay, so then we'll look at what is the purpose of marketing and what is the purpose of market segmentation and the types of segmentation that the companies or businesses go into. So the reason why businesses go into market segmentation is because the different customers, they're going to look at different types of customers. They need different benefits. They different people will be able to pay different amounts, or they won't be able to pay different amounts. And people look at different types of medias. They are logged into television, newspapers, and magazines. They read different types of magazines and newspapers, and they see different quantities of the goods and services they buy. The people differ in terms of their time and place they buy goods from, and so on. Okay, so this is market. This is why the businesses need to segment their markets, because the customers differ in terms of everything. Their behavior differs, their purchasing power differs, their amount of buying differs, the type of goods they buy or where buy from they differ, and so on. Okay, so the market segmentation is important, and it's split up into different types of segments or divisions, or different types of people or different types of parts to get a better idea, to get a better product, so that business can enable better marketing and make sure that they target their relevant customers rather than everybody that they want to sell to. So they are selecting particular type of customers they want to catch. Okay, and the purpose of marketing is also to look at the message that they're going to put through and whether it's received successfully or it's not received successfully. Okay, so the basis of marketing segmentation are different types of marketing segmentation. We can divide the marketing segments into geographical segments, demographic segments, behavioral segments, or psychographic segments. Geographic segments, like for example, you target your customers within a particular locality or within the reach of a particular boundary of a particular city, particular town, particular country, or the customer location, the region, the classification, and the rural areas or urban areas, or within a certain boundary limits. And for example, 10 miles from the city center you're locating, or 50 miles from the city center. So you define your geographical location and where you want to target your customers, where you want to get your your segments. And so you design that particular advert according to this particular geographic location. The second one is the demographic location or segmentation, whereby we target according to, for example, age or gender or occupation or socioeconomic group. For example, you can target university students, for example, in throughout a country, for example, or you're targeting a sports people, or you're targeting particularly professional persons in a country, for instance, okay? Or for example, older people, for example, or pensioners, or advert relating to, for example, ladies of a certain age, and so on. Okay, so you can design your market according to this particular demographic segment. And the third one is the behavioral segmentation, which means the customers wanting a value for money, which might result in buying a particular product. So for example, you look at the behavior of the people, you look at the behavior of customers, and see whether they'll buy, whether they'll buy your product when you offer them some kind of a bonus, or when you offer them some kind of a benefit, or some kind of allurement, or attachment, or you offer, how would they behave when you offer them an incentive, for example, loyalties, buy one get one free, for example, or the more they use, the more they buy, and so on, discounts and so on. Okay, so this is you target your customers, you segment your customers, you divide your customers according to the behavior of your customers, and see whether they whether they behave differently or otherwise. Okay, and the fourth one is the psychographic segmentation. Psychographic means you look at the customers who prefer to buy organic food, for example, or inorganic food, for example, or genetically modified food, for example. But this psychographic means you studying people, you studying their lifestyle, you looking at their attitudes, you are targeting their class, okay, upper class or lower class or the middle class, and so you target your customers accordingly. Okay, so psychographic behavior, and then you can segment your market according to that particular segmentation. Okay, for this means for businesses, they have to look at their values, and they prefer different lifestyle, different interests, values, and preferences over particular goods and services, and the marketers recognize these differences, and so therefore they advertise accordingly. Okay, so large businesses, for example, it's important that they understand these segments, because they can track, they can attribute, they can target specific target markets to enable them to better address the varying wants and needs of customers in these particular regions and circumstances. For smaller businesses, it allows them to focus their marketing efforts on a much more defined area of interest, effectively avoiding inefficient spending. So that's why, okay, when we look at the demographic segments, it's again it's very important that when you are selling premium goods, or for example selling a particular type of a good on an online market, the gender of your audience isn't as important as their age, and they have to be able to afford the courses, or they have to be able to afford the goods that they are learning, or they're willing to buy. And okay, so it's very important to target that. Okay, behaviorally segmentation, it behaviorally looks at the how far can these customers go with some of the other behavioral segments as to buying particular goods or not. So if the customer is consistently choosing low cost option, then you might conclude that the price matters most to them, and then you can target them accordingly. Okay, so you can check their behavior, or otherwise they might go for a different segment. So psychographic, lastly, the psychographic segmentation is important in the sense that the marketing team, for a particular goods, when they notice a particular group of users, they're buying different types of goods multiply, then they they will extrapolate these trends. They will look at these customers, and then they will narrow their customers according to the strategy, according to the buying power, or according to their campaign, and they can design a different campaign for these type of people. Okay, so for example, if you're purchasing multiple flights between the same departing and destination cities, never fly on a particular weekend, then the marketing team can extrapolate these customers are flying on business or other, and they can start planning their campaign accordingly. Okay, so this is how we can use these segmentation to study the customer's behavior, and we mold our marketing campaign according to their behavior and so on. Okay, the second thing we need to look at is how to evaluate our target segments for an organizational context. This is the 3.2. Okay, we can we can evaluate our targeted segments according to, for example, target audience analysis. We can target them according to these psychographic information. We can target them, or we can target our analysis according to demographic information. We can look at the behavioral or geographical information, and we can target our audience accordingly. Okay, one way is we can do that is we can divide them into, number one, for example, we can identify a target consumer market, which involves identifying the potential customers of a business in terms of their demographic, as we said earlier on, and their needs and preferences. Okay, we can look at different information relating to the company's products, and we can collect that information, and we use that information to divide the market, for example, and identify different characteristics of customers in particular market. We can conduct market research, and collect the data, and use that data for our analysis as well. We can collect market data according to, say, primary research or secondary published research and so on, because the primary research is expensive and time consuming, may not we may not have time to do that, but if it suits your needs and you have the resources, you can do the primary research for your own purpose. Secondary research is a bit cheaper and already available, already published. You can use that particular data, and according to the data you have collected, you maybe change a little bit of it, or you can target your market analysis according to that. Okay, example, if we are for example a business travel company, example of target market analysis for a business travel company is when we are looking at the key demographics. For example, you are targeting your customers according to their age range, or a gender, male and female, and we can target our market according to the job titles, for example, procurement officer or travel buyer and so on, and that will give us some kind of data, and we can analyze those data in terms of psychographics. For example, we value relationships when working with suppliers. We look at the repetitive working on dislikes or different tasks and so on. We look at different responsibilities, and we can are we wary of handling different responsibilities and so on. So we can target, we can use the business travel company as an example of target market analysis. Also, we can look at some challenges. This will give us some challenges. When we collect data, we can look at suppliers, for example, or who don't, who fail to deliver on promised resources or promised rates, for example, or there are other challenges like the data, have enough data to make informed decisions and not familiar with ground level travel concerns and so on. Okay, so we can have challenges. For this company may have challenges on different things. Preferred channels is, for example, they can look at the answers via graphic or via organic research and communicate with other procurement professionals on social media platforms. They can look at the case studies. They can look at the other blog posts and so forth. So they collect data from various sources and look for answers via this research, and they can communicate this research and use that research via different platforms and so on. Okay, different examples. We can also look at other examples like Facebook, for example. How do they target their market? They can target their market. Initially, when they started, they were only targeting students, for example, for its platform. As they got popular, as they got bigger, as they grow older and became better, then they started to have a target market of different people, like 25 to 35 years old, and people in different countries, many different countries, or maybe over 157 countries, and they targeted their market there. Okay, so the target market is very important when we are looking at the market segmentation. Okay, for Apple, for example, if you talk about Apple, its main customers are users of Apple products, who are its main users are the youth. For example, Apple are targeting this particular segment of their market, because it focuses on products. It may be they are there for targeting these youths because they are attracted to their product, or maybe the purchasing power, or maybe the buzz they get from owning Apple products, or the efficiency or whatever. So their target market is particularly youth market, and they are quite successful in their marketing, market segmentation. Okay, now B&B market segmentation, they target a different marketing segmentation, and they have different target market because their products are different. So you can mainly they are real estate agents, and they are targeting that particular segment, because that's where they are popular, and this is a good market section for them, because they get business and they get different what you call them, different response from this target market, and they have lots of agents in many different countries. So therefore, because they get different combination of these factors, and they get different people all over the world. Okay, so that's so let's moving on to how do we differentiate a brand position for our targeted segments for an organizational contact. Now 3.3 looks at the designing this type of marketing campaign into a differentiated brand position for target segments. So first of all, you need to do the strategic evaluation. When you need to do the what you call them differentiation or brand differentiated brand position, you need to start from the strategic evaluation. Now, strategic evaluation is a process of determining the effectiveness of a given strategy in achieving organizational objectives and taking the corrective measures. So you start off with, for example, you determine what to measure, right? The first stage of this process is determining what you're going to measure, and you establish particular standards. Okay, then you move on to the third step, which is to measure the performance. How you measure this performance is, you look at your own past performance maybe, and you look at other yardsticks or other standard that's performed by other sector, your competitors, and you look at the standard they're adopting. Maybe you can look at the your own organization in terms of their standards and measure it, measure your own performance. Okay, then if if that measurement is a good performance, and does it match your standard? If it does, then you can keep it, then you can adopt it, then you can carry on with it. If it doesn't match with your standard, with your particular standard of performance, then you take some kind of corrective action and repeat the process from 3 to 5, then to correct this performance. Okay, so this is a process whereby whereby the company finds in order to do the effectiveness of the strategy, you do this corrective measure, and when you measure the performance, then you are doing the thing that you need to do. Otherwise, if you are falling below standard, then you have to change your goals, or you have to change your posts and take a corrective action. Okay, so this is a kind of a quick the process for determining the effectiveness of a given strategy. How can we do other techniques? How can we measure our performance using other techniques for evaluation? Now, one technique is also again here, for example, SWOT analysis. I'm sure you must have gathered SWOT analysis in your other subject. SWOT is one measurement of or one technique for strategic evaluation, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now, strengths are what type of products you are good in, or what you are good in, your internal capabilities, your internal resources, your internal performance, your internal effectiveness, and so on. Okay, are you following your internal policies and procedures, and are they effective? The type of thing that you do good, the type of thing that you do bad. So strengths are those that you are currently having good things within the organization, and weaknesses are the limitations, that are problems or the obstacles, or the things that you can't achieve because you are limited, your ability is limited to achieving those goods and services, or you're limited to achieving those targets because you don't have resources, you don't have capabilities, you don't have anything like this. This can be a weakness. However, that can be also an opportunity, because if there is a weakness, then there is an opportunity to develop that weakness and become a strength afterwards. Okay, so weakness can be turned into an opportunity to make sure that the company is able to exploit that weakness and turn it into advantage. Okay, so that kind of thing. And the threats are things that you are faced with that are external to the company's performance, or maybe internal, current and emerging external factors, most likely. For example, competitors, threats, or development of new products onto the market, or your legal problems or other threats coming from trade competitors, and so you need to combat them threats. So we can develop our SWOT analysis to measure strategic evaluation. Okay, a second technique you can do is the gap analysis, where where you look at the where you are now and where you want to end up. Okay, so there is a gap between where you are now and where you end up in X number of years, or according to the time and so on. So how you're going to get there is the gap analysis, and what you can do. So where you are where you want to go and where you are now. This is a kind of a gap. And if you don't do anything, then of course your organization will suffer. But if you want to progress, if you want to keep in business, if you want to retain yourself in the market, then you have to take that into consideration and do a kind of a gap analysis, and then take some steps forward to improving. Okay. The third technique that you can use for strategic evaluation is also, you must have studied in the other subjects, in the other modules, pastel analysis, which is political, economic, social, legal, environmental, and technological factors. They are external to the organization, and they are very important, very important measures, okay? Because the external factors affecting the organization, in the sense that, political stability or political decisions will have a decision on the organization in terms of, say, for example, trade, trading imbalance, for example, or exchange rate, if the exchange rate is suffering, or the interest rate suffering, or the political turmoil in a particular country, will have effect on the investments, on bringing in the investment, and that will have an implication on the industry and so on. Okay, this is connected with economic turmoil, interest rates, and unemployment, and inflation, and controlling the money supply, for example. All these factors can have an impact on the organization's ability to do things for the future. So political and economic interact together, or all of these factors interact together. You can't compartmentalize them because one factor depends on the other. However, they are important. We need to talk about these. So social factors, like demographic factors, like age, aging population, or declining of skills, for instance, or number of working age people are declining or increasing, or skills level, and so on. Demographic, where they're located, all this type of trends, and maybe social income, or social factors like demand, for example, what type of products people are wanting to buy, or whatever. So these social factors are very important. People, where are they located, where are they living, which geographical location are they looking at, or living. So this will have an effect on the evaluation and the products they buy. So this is another factor, very important. Legal, for example, legal factors like the laws and procedures in particular country will affect businesses, of course. Health and safety laws, for example, minimum wage rate, for example, minimum wage to be paid to, say, 18 years old or 19 years old, and holidays and legal issues like the training, for example, training in particular situations, or the temperatures, or all these health and safety laws in working conditions are important, and they affect organizations as a whole. So these got to be taken into consideration. Environmental factors like pollution, like air quality, like the temperature in organizations, all the recycling, for example, other corporate social responsibility, and what are the organization doing to help the environment, and what type of the policies and the factors they are considering implementing, and so on. Okay. So these are quite important. To what extent are they doing their responsibility in organizing or effective training to get awareness from the workers and implement it throughout their organization, and how it helps society. And so, okay, so the environmental factors affect organization, and you do evaluate according to the strategy, according to these factors as well. And then lastly, technological factors. To what extent is an organization keeping up pace with the technology, implementation of technology, for example, or training and development in technology, or buying research and development, or other things. What extent Are they using computers, for example, or internet technology, or the latest development of products, or, to what extent are they doing research in their particular area, and so on. All these factors, pastel factors, are external, and this is one of the techniques that you can use to measure, or you can use to evaluate strategic analysis in your organization. And the other, another technique is the benchmarking. There are different types of benchmarking. Now, the benchmarking is, it's a process, like internet or internal benchmarking, and the external benchmarking, i.e., it can be different types of benchmarking, and you can have your own benchmarks, you can have your own standards, you can have your own measurements. What is, you can measure against a particular a benchmark and see whether it's good enough for you or whether it's bad enough. And you need to do the benchmarking in terms of its processes, performance, and strategic performance benchmarking. So you can, do that, okay, to measure and do the strategic evaluation. Okay. Another technique that we can use, organizations can use, is the balanced scorecard in terms of their financial perspective, financial capability, financial strengths or financial weakness, or financial, from the financial viewpoint, because financial is, you look at what type of financial performance should we provide to our stakeholders, for example, high return or high yield on their investment, or on what shall we declare dividends on, on the shares, and so on. Okay, so the financial perspective is important. How do we measure our performance in terms of utilization of our assets, for example, fixed assets, and how do we, what's the measurement of our liquidity and assets and ratios, and are we doing good according to ourselves or compared to other organizations? What is our performance? You can use different ratios, liquidity ratio, profitability ratios, or utilization of assets ratio, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you can do balanced scorecard. You can use a balanced scorecard as a measure, okay, to evaluate strategic options or strategy in terms of its vision and strategy. Of course, don't forget to, that's because that's the center point. You're measuring against your strategy. No good using the measurement of financial ratios when they are not related to your vision and strategy. So everything's got to be related according to your vision and strategy. Okay. A second element in a balanced scorecard is you look at the internal business perspectives to satisfy, to your stakeholders or customers or business processes, what shall we excel in or what shall we not excel in. Okay, so you do that. In other words, internal perspective, i.e. SWOT, for example, is one measurement. Okay, internal business perspective, and that's very important. Okay, of course, again, in terms of your vision and strategy. And the third element of a balanced scorecard is you look at the customer perspective. For example, to achieve our vision, how should we be seen by our customer? What is our image? What's our perception from our customers? What do they visualize us? How do they see us? They see us a good company or a bad company, high or bottom class or middle class, or where do they place us? Okay, so you need to work, from the angle of the customers. And the fourth element that's, where you look at the balanced scorecard is the innovation and learning, i.e. to what extent is our organization a learning organization? Are we changing with time? Are we providing learning to our workers? Are we giving them training? And to what extent are our workers prone to change? And is there any resistance to change? Are they willing to change? And is this change imminent? And is it viable? Is it necessary? Is it not causing too much pain and problems for for our workforce, because the change is always painful, and people who do not change, or organizations who do not change, don't survive very much. So you need to look at the change and improve for the betterment of the organization, of course, in terms of your vision and strategy. Okay, so this technique you can use for strategic evaluation, the balanced scorecard. Okay, so this is another technique. Another technique we can also use is the Porter's generic strategy, which is to look at the advantage or competitive advantage. To what extent are we competitive against our competitors? Okay, to what extent are we our products are good? Are we targeting our audience? Are we targeting our customers? What type of products, what type of market are we in? Are we in a low cost market or a high cost market, or we are in a narrow target, or are we in a broad target or industry wide target? Are we targeting our customers according to segments, or are we focused into specific targets? For example, we are looking for specific segments, or we're looking for different segments. So you need to look at the cost leadership, a differentiation, focused cost leadership and focused differentiation in terms of staying competitive. So that you can use this Porter's generic strategies in to measure strategic evaluation. Okay. Cost leadership is very important. Now, cost leadership also is it involves when organizations become low cost organization in a domain of activity, strategic evaluation is very important. When we look at the cost leadership, it involves looking at key drivers, like, for example, input costs, i.e. material costs, for example, the input cost, direct materials, or labor, or the variable costs, or direct cost and fixed cost, and all these type of costs that we have producing goods and services. To what extent are they variable or fixed, or are they economical, or they're not economical? So all these inputs cost, like raw material, labor and direct costs, important cost drivers. Okay, economies of scale, very important. To what extent are we getting economies of scale from our suppliers, i.e. are we getting discount, or are we paying high price for our raw materials? And if you are getting good economies of scale, you're getting good discounts from your suppliers, you can pass this on to your customers in terms of lower prices, and then you can stay competitive. But if your input costs are high, and you're not getting economies of scale, therefore the cost of purchasing these goods and then producing on top of those the final product will be expensive to the consumer, and it will affect your market leadership or the cost leadership. And so therefore you need to be aware to what extent are you exploring economies, or you're going into diseconomies of scale. Okay, experience and product processes and designs, okay, are other cost drivers and they help cost leadership. Now, the cost leadership involves to what extent are you low cost organization, right? So therefore these are very important. So you take these into account, these cost drivers, to get you move forward into the cost leadership. Differentiation, differentiating products, for example, as we said earlier, differentiation involves it's a dimension whereby the customers are differentiated in terms of differently, or the products are differentiated differently. Two factors, strategic or customer, for example, the customer on whose needs differentiated is based, and the key competitors who can compete in your space. Valuable differentiation involves additional investment and higher costs so differentiation, we talked about the differentiation of, psychological differentiation, or, product, on designing, or price differentiation, or, designing the material, or designing the product, for example, or targeting customers differently, right? So you need to look at these factors, when we are talking about who are your strategic customers, and who are your strategic or the key competitors, and who can compete in your space. So if we differentiate our products, we have to be very sure that these two factors are taken into consideration, because differentiation, lots of, it's a high cost rebranding, differentiating the product, redesigning the product. It's costly, it will affect the image of the organization, and it's difficult. It requires a lot of thinking and a lot of investment, and lots of high costs. So when we want to rebrand, or when we want to differentiate the products, we've got to be aware of these key factors, because otherwise the company will suffer if they don't get it right. Okay. Now, uniqueness drivers, for example, you can differentiate, creating different, differentiation advantage by looking at these drivers in terms of quality control procedures, or in terms of sales and marketing. You can look at your differentiation, and you look at in terms of the customer service. You can look up in terms of research and development. You can differentiate your products according to the performance, the features, the product, the input quality. You can look at the differentiation in terms of your employees training, employees skills, experiences, in terms of technology. So there are different drivers to creating, a differentiation advantage, because you can differentiate products into design of the products, or you can differentiate your products according to your quality control procedures and processes, and that affects, or you can differentiate your products in terms of your customer service behavior, sales and after sales service, or maybe research and development and training and skills, and so there are a lot of different drivers that will differentiate your advantage against your competitors. So it's very important then, when you create this evaluation, you take differentiation into account in terms of many other things than just product itself. There are pre-product, in other words, the hidden factors that affect the branding, affect the differentiation. Okay. Brand development process, you can look at the another way of evaluating your strategy, evaluating your in terms of the brand development process. Now, brand development looks at it's a 5-step process. For example, you look at analyze your market. For example, you want to analyze your market in terms of research and competitor analysis. Why do we do this? Is we need to look at the opportunities and issues in the market. We need to identify. The brand development is a process which measures, evaluates, and adjusts your product development, or your strategic development, or your brand development. And how you do this is, number one, is you analyze your market first. And why do we do this? Is we need to look at the opportunities and issues, and we need to identify these issues at the start, so we can take some kind of action from the start, and we start defining our goals, so we can set our goals and we can set our purpose to give us a clear picture of a strategy, where we're going to go, how we're going to go, and why do we need to go. So it gives us a clear direction for changing our strategy or taking some kind of action. And the third stage is we need this development process in order to see what type of segments targeting, what type of audience we are going to look at, what type of customers are we going to look at, what's our position in the market, how are we, what are the priorities and opportunities in the market, and how we can develop into our brand, how we can align our audience needs with our brand benefits, how we can prioritize our opportunities and define our brand relevance, and so on. Okay, and then once you define the segments and positionings of your brand, then you build up the brand identity to define your brand, how it works, why it doesn't work, and you can remold or change a little bit or modify it so that it is consistent, it's deliverable, it's gives you some kind of a activity to do, it's make sure so that it works. Okay, and you need to do that. Then once you acquired your once you built your identity, then you can move on activating your brand, i.e. you create a brand image, you create a brand plan, and you activate the calendar, and you drive the growth, and you satisfy the customers so that the customers give you a good feedback, and they come and stick to your brand. So this is a kind of a brand redevelopment or brand development process, whereby you measure, evaluate, and adjust this type of actions, and you need to take why do we measure it, and why do we evaluate it, and all to do improvement, and all to be better and competitive in the market. Okay, so that's very important. Furthermore, you can when we are looking at our market, when we're looking at our targets or positioning, we need to look at these in terms of our segmentation. Are we looking at the market in total, and how we can divide the market into different types of manageable groups, or are we targeting in particular groups to achieve best chances for success, or we are going to position our brand to the best of our abilities and to meet the customer's demand. So we need to look at why we are segmenting, what type of segments, are we going to divide segments into an equal segments, or are we going to divide into different groups, or different percentages, or different measurements, and why, and where do we position ourselves? Okay, so we need to do that, to segment and target and position. Okay, and what's the positioning is to look at the target audience and the brand, and are these delivers, are they deliverable, or the benefits to the customers, and so that the customer benefits and they stick to our brand to meet their needs and to meet our expectations. Okay, so you can you can move according to the segments or targeting. Okay, example, for example, you look at the brand identity prism, where it looks at the picture of a receiver, and in terms of picture of a sender, and you can make sure that it's a kind of a strategy which builds upon relationship, and it makes for example Nike, for example, it built up its brand identity in terms of physique, and in its terms of relationship, in terms of reflection, self-image, culture, and personality. So there are six types of elements they are using to portray itself, to create a brand identity for itself. In a brand prism is a kind of a tool that you can use to create a brand image for organization. Okay, and it's very important that this is reflected in the market or in the strategy of our organizations. Okay, so when we go back, let's go back into our original what you call them learning outcome. We initiated, or we started with the purpose of carrying out our market segmentation, targeting, and brand positioning. So in LO3 we considered today, we considered a lot of thing about what is segment. For example, how can we differentiate our position? How can we explore marketing to segments? For example, we talked about different types of segments like geographic and demographic, behavioral and psychographic segments. And we use different tools. For example, we looked at the tools of segmentation in terms of target audience analysis, like, for example, we talked about the travel group. We looked at travel company in terms of, we looked at the Facebook, we looked at the Apple, how they target their markets. And we looked at, how we can differentiate our targeting groups. We looked at segments, how we can position target segments, or we look at how we can evaluate our strategic evaluation. We looked at the process of determining the effectiveness of a strategy, and the process that we've gone through, the 5-step process whereby we determine what to measure and how to establish predetermined standards, and we measure the standards, and if they're workable or not workable, or are they going according to standard or not according to standard. And if they don't, then we put a check and balance or control, and then we measure that again. So in other words, we put a control in, and then if they are then performing according to standard, we don't take any action. But if they don't according to the standard, then we take some kind of a measurable action, and then we correct it. Okay. We looked at the SWOT analysis, gap analysis. We looked at the pastel benchmarking and balanced scorecard as a strategic evaluation techniques. And we also looked at the Porter's generic strategies, and the cost leadership. So all in all, we looked at different techniques today to cover our segment and target marketing and branding position. Hope you've enjoyed it, or you listened to it. I'm sure if I've confused, I do apologize for if I'm confusing or if there's too much, because we've got a lot of materials to get through in this particular hour. Okay, if there are any questions, please let me know. If not, then I'll see you with another session, LO4, next time. Thank you very much for joining. Have a good day. Bye-bye.